And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports podcast. I am here tonight on an actually kind of cold night, even for Florida standards. Well, I guess anything is cold for Florida standards. So I should say it is cold in Florida, even here, as opposed to normally where it would be cold, like, say, somewhere DC. That's a cold place around this time of year. Carlos,
James, you'd think I'd figure out how to unmute myself going live now for however many times
it's
we've
just
done
too
this.
cold to talk.
It's so cold. It's like negative a million degrees out right now. I hopped on my bike and I thought I could handle it. I have a pretty heavy jacket. I was like, I'm just gonna go get some food really quickly after work, and oh man, I was not happy. I'll tell you what. The wind was hitting my face and it felt like rocks. James. It was terrible. I don't know how I'm going to get to work tomorrow. I don't want to leave my apartment because it's so cold. I get why seasonal depression happens now, because why would anybody want to leave their apartment? It's freezing out there, James. Good Lord. I wonder how these people live up in like Boston, it gets darker even earlier.
I thought you were going to say even farther north than that.
No. I mean, I'm just next major city up. I mean, past New York, you got Boston, right? It gets so cold and so quick. It's like 3:00 and the sun's going down. I don't know how people do it. James, we're live. We have Rowdies players to talk about still. We have a new Rowdies player to talk about here in just a little bit. Curious to hear your thoughts on this guy because he looks pretty fun. I've seen the highlights, I've seen the reels, and man, this kid looks like he can add something special to this team. Before we do that, though, players talking about, like I said, we'll keep recapping the season, talk about our back line guys and our forwards. Our little player reviews have been somewhat all over the place with the scattered news we've gotten throughout the offseason already. Already seems to be a busy time, so I'm looking forward to, as December comes along, even more news coming out. So keep an eye on it. I guess don't stay on social media too long. I was going to say keep an eye on social media, but take a break every once in a while. It's so bad. Check my phone screen time, and it's kind of humbling. But whatever, James, before we do any of that, how are you doing down in still chilly Tampa, Florida?
Yeah, well, I am able to go outside. I'm not held inside by the cold, so I can touch grass. I can get away from the social media. I guess you can touch pavement, then go back inside real fast and say that you were outside.
Exactly.
But I think that it's kind of nice out here just to get a little bit of the change in the weather. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sure plenty of people, including my wife, would argue with me, but that's fine. Last week, we were trying to start our player grades and then get through those a little bit further. But as Carlos mentioned, we were derailed because there was a big announcement related to the Rowdies roster.
Yep.
And that actually continues tonight, but we are going to do that at the end of the show because we are going to continue with our player grades. We are back on schedule as far as we have a schedule for the postseason, which we kind of don't because we have a lot of time to cover until we have a full roster to go over. But we do have bits and pieces here and there, so it's fun to cover it nonetheless. We will be doing our defenders and attackers in this night's player grade, so pay attention for that. Obviously, it will be a little bit different because they are completely different roles on the field, but I think that everybody can generally chip in with their own opinions about not only our grades, but how the players did, of course, because there are going to be some wild opinions, I think, varying between the people who listen. And Carlos and myself, actually, we didn't have too many disagreements last time around, but I'm sure that we'll have a few more. There's going to be a little bit more variance when it comes to this group of players, I would imagine. So please like and subscribe to us on YouTube, any major podcast platform, wherever you are. Follow RBLR Sports on social media as well at RBLR Sports. You can chime in to our conversation if you have any suggestions of your own. If you have any input, we are always here to take that. Let's get into our defenders now. Carlos, this should be a relatively easy one to start with. Before we get into the difficult ones, Forrest Lasso, 31 years old, Forrest Lasso, 10 appearances last season, all the way through May when he tore his ACL and unfortunately could not continue for the rest of the season. In those 10 appearances, he had 9 starts, including 2 goals, 2 assists, 5 RBLR Sports Man of the Match awards. So obviously he was doing pretty well. But like I said, unfortunately, he tore his ACL and we missed him probably until April or May of 2025. The Rowdies said that he was not on the roster for next season, although they are currently in talks to re-sign him. We'll see if those get over the line. Carlos, what's your grade?
I mean, just based off the amount of time he played, like that's the only window we're judging him off of. A- easy. He's way up there. Like he had a fantastic opening. He maybe took a game or two to settle in, but once he got comfortable, like he was prime Forrest Lasso. This one really hurt at the beginning of the year because not only was he defending well, he was comfortable on the back line, but based on the stats you just read, and if you recall a couple of those games, he got 2 goals, both off of set pieces. Like he was feeling it in the air. And when Forrest Lasso is comfortable and he feels good on the corner kicks and he's going up and making things happen offensively too, there's very few people in this league that can physically match up to someone of his physical build, and who can move as well as he does in the opponent's box. He was killing it. Truly, I think this was like we didn't talk about it a ton after he got injured because it was so early on in the season. We kind of had to just move on and do what we can with who we had. But I think that's one of the more under discussed pieces of this season is Forrest Lasso's injury and maybe how that affected our ability on set pieces. Very rarely have we talked about a Rowdy squad that's like a very good set piece team. But Forrest Lasso, when he's on it, is someone that can make us single-handedly a good set piece team. You put a ball vaguely in his area and you can put that ball in the net, a corner kick, free kick, whatever. And it really, really stinks because, like you said, 2 goals, 2 assists. We gave him 5 RBLR Man of the Match awards. And I'm going back to double check. Yeah, he had 2 assists kind of early on in the season, and then towards the back end, the last game he had before the injury was those 2 goals that he had in the same game against FC Tulsa. So he teased us with that. He knocked in 2 goals and then was unavailable for the rest of the year. So highly unfortunate. He had a very silly red card against Memphis, which I don't think was a red card to this day. And that was a throwaway game. When
you and I were up in arms for a little bit about that.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I was looking back at his season just now on another tab here. But throwing that away, easy A- season. He would have settled in and made it an A+ season. Absolutely. He was en route to a fantastic prime Forrest Lasso season this year. All that being said, if he's healthy again, we can get him back on this team. Absolutely. Hope we can have him back.
Yeah, I am in total agreement with that. I don't think that there's anything that I really have to add there. I had actually forgotten about the red card as well. But yeah, if he had more time, then I assume that things would have continued to get better for him. I assume that things would have continued to get better for the team overall. It's unfortunate that we didn't, and I will give him an A- for his 10 appearances as well. That's a good call. All right, well, that one was relatively easy.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Off to a good start, James. Like you said, I feel like this is between the back line and the forwards here. I feel like we're going to get a couple disagreements on this one, but Forrest Lasso, I think that was an easy one to knock out. Next guy was someone who I guess we would call his replacement, James.
Yeah.
This was a guy who would have to step up a bit more this season, and maybe he did a decent job of it. He was 25 years old, Freddie Kleeman, turning 26. He had 26 appearances this year, 23 starts, 1 goal. This is the guy who I think we could pretty clearly say stepped in for Forrest Lasso. We had some movement in the back line. Adi Manjoma coming in, who we'll talk about in a little bit here. Pretty early on in the season. Jordan Doherty kind of finding his role in the back line. Just Aaron Guillen's obviously back there, but there's a little bit of movement to kind of figure out what that back 3 would look like, at least initially at the beginning of the year. With Lasso going down pretty early on in the season, Freddie Kleeman stepped in. Again, had 1 goal in that one. Oh, what game was it? It was a game we lost. It was in Charleston. If I'm not mistaken, I might just be waffling.
No,
yeah.
That's it.
And I think I was joking with you when we talked about that game. that he was the one that we obviously expected to score our only goal that game when we lost 3-1 at Charleston. So he certainly didn't replace, I think, the imposing physicality that a guy like Forrest Lasso has in the box on set pieces and whatnot. He's a guy that I was hoping would, because he's, obviously pretty tall. He's got a good build to him, but he didn't really seem to find that in his game. I don't know if that's something he's had in his arsenal in the past. It didn't really seem to be something that was much of a factor at all in this one, this season. So offensively, not much there, which is fine. If you're a defender and you can defend perfectly, that you don't need any attack, obviously. Like, I'm okay with you being a great defender. Freddie Kleeman, for me, had a mixed bag of a year, though. I feel like he made a bunch of silly mistakes. Just seemed a bit uncomfortable out there, especially early on in the season, which is understandable. You come in, you weren't really expecting to play a ton, maybe, and you have to step in for arguably the best defender on this team, right? So maybe a little bit of nerves there, but there were times where we would come back on these episodes, James, and we'd talk about how he kind of just looked a little clumsy out there, wasn't really finding his footing. Super tall, obviously, so he kind of stands out a bit when he's struggling, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think all things considered, he had a decent season. Back defensively as a whole, I think we struggled this year more than we have in the past. These Rowdy squads have been pretty defined by a great back line. I think Kleeman didn't really seem to settle in as much as I was hoping for. So I'll give him a solid B-, all things considered. I think that might still be a little generous, to be fair. But taking in the circumstances of having to step in, be much, a bigger role than he might have expected, I'll give him a B-.
Okay. Well, I can understand where you're coming from, that he might not have expected to play the role that he did. But in soccer, always players talk about the experience of it's the next man up kind of deal. And if you are not the starter, you always want to be the starter naturally. And when somebody gets injured, you've got to take the chance that you're given and go to the next level and show that you deserve to be there. I like Freddie Kleeman as a depth piece. And that's where I guess I'm going to sound a little harsh, because I don't know. Well, he's certainly not at the level of Forrest Lasso. I will say that. But I don't know that he's at the level that the Rowdies coaching staff are probably looking for to have as one of our actual backline starters, unfortunately. If he came back and he was designated as a depth piece and we didn't have the injuries that required us to put him in a starting role, that would probably be better. So I'm going to maybe harshly give him a C- here. This will be our first disagreement, I guess. But I remember specifically, I remember one moment. I just can't place when it was in the season, so I apologize that it sounds like, oh, you have to see through my mind's eye. But I remember one moment specifically. It was similar to others that I had seen around it, and it wasn't the case that he was big and clumsy. It was the case that he was slow to react to a play that was developing, and ultimately he came in sliding late. And we gave up a goal on that one. I think that we also did this against Hartford, not the game at IMG, but the game in Hartford. I think that he looked bad on a couple occasions in that game. So there were some moments that I can remember. Again, if I could point to them, I would grab them out, but I can't specifically. There were some moments that I could remember where it wasn't anything about even his speed. It was mental quickness. It was the reaction period, the reaction time, and it took too long. So I'm going to give him a C-, and I don't think that he was actually retained for 2025. So
he was not.
Ultimately we will see where he ends up. But I guess from my less informed perspective, certainly my less informed perspective, I will give Freddie Kleeman. I will say I can understand where the coaching staff decided that they could probably try and find someone who would fill their needs a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, like, he had his solid games. I mean, I think it's easy to maybe not easy. I think it's harder actually to point to when a defender had like a particularly solid game, because you don't really talk about them a ton if they had just really solid game, right? occasionally you have your like elite game where you're sliding all over the place and making goal line clearances and everything. But I could give you, just looking back to the playoff run that we had. Defensively, we looked good against Detroit. Defensively, we had a couple shaky moments against Charleston, which I think Kleeman had a bit of involvement in. But I mean, Indy was a great game to close out the year defensively, and he was a great part of that too. Like he had a couple solid games I can recall just looking back at this season. But again, just a couple of moments where like you said, some slow to react moments. And unfortunately, those are the ones that kind of stick out in people's memories when you're on the back line. Because unfortunately, those are the ones to lead to the most consequential, effects, usually negative effects if you're on the back line. So it's tough. It is what it is, though. Freddie Kleeman, best of luck to him. I mean, again, I think he did a decent enough job from my perspective, stepping in for Boris Lasso, but big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Probably quite literally. And on top of that, just, I don't know. I mean, the back line as a whole kind of struggled once Lasso went down. So maybe that's kind of a spoiler alert as to how the rest of my ratings will go. But fine job from him, I think. Good luck to him wherever he goes. I'm curious to see where he ends up. I do think he still has a lot to give.
Yeah.
I wasn't working on this Rowdy squad, so unfortunate, but it is what it is. James, another guy we know will not be returning to this squad, this Tampa Bay Rowdies team, Jordan Doherty. When we know where he's going, we can talk about it later on as well. It's pretty fun, I think, for him. 24-year-old Jordan Doherty, backline guy, 36 appearances, 36 starts. That's an Iron Man if I've ever seen one.
Mm-hmm.
1 goal this season, 4 man of the match appearances. Again, someone who will not be coming back to this team, but who, off the bat, I would say if there was a world where he didn't already sign a contract with a new team, I would have absolutely loved to have him back. He's part of this core that on the back line and even sometimes in the defensive midfield has just done an incredibly solid job almost every game. There's maybe 1 or 2 times I can think of where we might have called him out at some point this year for being a bit slow to react or being out of position, but it's just so rare for him. Again, another pretty great season from him. I can't recall his goal actually now that I think about it. But overall defensively, he was one of our bright spots. I think of the back 3 starters that took up the majority of the year, which was, either Doherty, Guillen, and Kleeman, or Doherty, Guillen, and sometimes Manjoma. I think Doherty was by far and away our best and most consistent this year.
Yeah.
Again, backline had some problems collectively, had some moments. I feel like I'm hyping him up a lot for what the grade I'm going to give him, but it's not his fault. Collectively, we just struggled a bit this year, and I think that trickled down to the back line. Jordan Doherty gets a solid A- from me as well, actually. It could be higher, truly. Like, I feel like I hyped him up a lot to hit him with a minus on that A. But again, a couple of moments that really stick out to me, where he might have been a bit slower to the ball than we would have hoped. But again, I don't think that's entirely his fault. A lot of these moments, it's a team sport, it's hard to carry a back line by yourself. I think collectively the guys in the back struggled a bit this year, especially once Lasso went down, even before Lasso went down, but struggled to find our identity this year, I think, in the back. Jordan Doherty, certainly the bright spot up there or back there. So A- for me. Again, good luck to him in his new club, again, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit.
Yeah, we'll save that for the end because I definitely do have thoughts about that one. But I guess we're going to have a little bit more of our disagreements when it comes to the back line here because I will give Jordan Doherty a B- for this season. I think that he is a pretty. He is a very good player at the USL championship level. I think that he's a player who, at his best moments, is knocking on the door of moving up a level, which in America would be MLS. Probably moving up a level for him would be moving to the to the English Championship, which is not the Scottish Championship. And I think that I didn't see that all the time from him this season. Just as you said, Carlos, Everybody struggled at times, especially just as we mentioned 2 weeks ago when we started our player grades, especially August and after. That's when the whole team really started to struggle. But I did want to see more from Jordan Doherty, and I think that he possibly priced himself out of not priced himself out, but did not earn himself a move to MLS that probably somebody was knocking on the door for. If, in my opinion, based off of his play, I think that there were some games through May, through June, where I think Jordan Doherty was where people in MLS would have been like, oh man, we should have signed him. Shoot, that's a miss. Getting through the end of the season, maybe that impetus was not there anymore. I'm not speaking off of any experience, by the way. I haven't spoken to anybody about this. This is all just me talking out how I feel about it. But yeah, that's why I'm a little bit harsher on Mr. Doherty than Carlos is for the 2024 season. I think that he'll do well in the future, and I think that he has a ton more to give. I think that he will go down ultimately as one of the best potential players in 2024, but I don't think we saw all of that turned in this past season, unfortunately.
Fair enough. And backline, like you said, struggled collectively. One of the guys, like I said, who came in as quote unquote a new guy, but started off pretty early on this season. I think his first game was March 30th for the Tampa Bay Rowdies against Rhode Island. So again, that's very early on in the season. He played 3 minutes for Phoenix Rising before making the move over to the Rowdies. Eddie Manjoma came in, 26 years old. He had 35 appearances, pretty crazy, and 26 starts, 1 assist, 2 Man of the Match awards from us. He can play for Zimbabwe, by the way, fun fact. Eddie Manjoma was an interesting one for me, and I think it's kind of hard for me to grade how I felt about him. So this is mostly anecdotal because I don't have a lot of numbers to back any of this up. But he came in very early on for the squad, played off the bat, sometimes got stuck in that back three. More often than not was on that right wing back spot as a more like defensive of the wing back players. Defensively, it would seem to be a strength. I think he looked fine. Didn't have a ton of moments that I could call out and be like, this is his fault that X or Y team scored a goal. Didn't have a lot to give.
There was one game.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't really give me a ton, or give us a ton in the attack, right? Especially being in that wingback spot. I think that was kind of frustrating because this team relies so much on a wingback that can push up, create opportunities. He would come in a lot for Nyangabire, or would start when Nyangabire was hurt. And Nick Moon was hurt as well. And there just wasn't a lot there. And I don't think that was necessarily like his fault. It's not his strong suit. I'm not sure if that was the position he would have, or the role he would have preferred to be in, where he was kind of like, we kind of need to rely on him to get upfield and put in a good cross. Only ended up having 1 assist on the year, despite all those appearances at the wingback spot. So I think that kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Pretty mediocre in that sense. Defensively, again, you might recall something that I'm not particularly recalling off the bat right now, but fine. But this will sound pretty harsh. He gets a solid, just middle of the pack C for me. It wasn't everything I hoped for when I saw we were getting a Phoenix Rising wingback. I thought there'd be a bit more from him, but again, just not really contributing a ton in the way that maybe I was expecting for a wingback that we were picking up. But again, it seemed not to be his natural role to get upfield and whip in a good ball. Did get 1 assist on the year, but defensively, that seemed to be where he was more comfortable.
Yes, absolutely. I am in mostly agreement with you. I will just say I'll give him a C+. I think that my C+ specifically goes to the fact that Eddie Manjoma probably was brought in explicitly as a backup choice. I know that Freddie Kleeman was brought in probably explicitly as a backup choice as well, but that did not last that way. That being said, he did get the 26 starts, so that's pretty interesting. Defensively, it was definitely his better side, and I think if we're looking at it the same way that I'm looking at Freddie Kleeman, I think that he's actually a better depth choice for a lot of positions, not only because he can do a lot of them, but or not only because of that, but he is so versatile. He can play multiple different roles that we saw this past season, and at least competently. So if he ultimately did come back to the team, I wouldn't be upset with that personally. I didn't get to talk with Eddie Manjoma too much over the course of this season, so that was unfortunate, but I did think that he's a good depth piece. So we'll see how it plays out for him. Regardless, of course, we wish him the best in the future, just like we do anybody who plays for the Rowdies and goes elsewhere. But I'll give him a C plus based off of that. The one thing for me was the game against Charleston. In Charleston, I remember that being a pretty poor one for Eddie Manjoma. If I believe it was that one. If that one is not, I possibly could be mixing it up, but I believe that was the one where he was involved in 2 of Charleston's goals, obviously in a negative way. So, but other than that, I think that he did have a very good job defensively over the course of the season, and it was just trying to get forward where we unfortunately didn't see enough. So that's about where I fall. I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
But so that's Eddie Manjoma. We'll move on now to Aaron Guillen, a big name for the Tampa Bay Rowdies and Tampa Bay Rowdies fans. He is 31 years old, the team captain in 2024. He had 35 appearances over the course of the season with 34 starts, and within that time, he earned 3 Man of the Match awards. Carlos, this is a difficult one because we've had a lot of players so far who started out with this type of role and ended up playing that type of role. Started out with this role or then got injured. Aaron Guillen was available for damn near the whole season, and it was just a case of his fortune was, in my opinion, roughly the same as the team overall. And I think that you and I are probably disappointed with the season as a whole, but understanding of certain things like the last month or 2 of the year, the team could only play games away from home, including home games. We played one of those in North Carolina. So, it's just difficult to go with here. And as the team captain, he probably had a lot more responsibility even than you or I would have seen in the locker room, at training sessions, all of that kind of stuff. So he's kind of there to shepherd the team through their worst moments. Like, hey, we got to leave our homes because there's a hurricane coming. Oh, hey, we got to leave our homes again because there's a hurricane coming. I guess taking that into account, I will say I'll give him a B. Because he probably did have a lot more responsibility. But otherwise, I would say that his fortunes for me would generally reflect the same as the team overall based on his availability.
That's a good way to put it. And the only time he didn't get an appearance, if I recall correctly, was when he picked up a slight knock. He missed 1 game. And I remember being very concerned because Guillen goes down. Okay, now it's a kind of mishmash on the back with Kleeman, Doherty, and Manjoma. And again, to just very quickly go back to Manjoma, super incredible utility player in that way, and that he's able to kind of jump around where needed competently. But Guillen has been one of our rocks in the back, truly. He was part of this incredible core with Lasso, Jordan Scarlett, and Aaron Guillen that I think was probably our best back line in the modern Rowdies era.
Yeah.
And Guillen has been there every step of the way. He's been fantastic. He's one of my favorite Rowdies players in the modern era. All that being said, like you said, somewhat disappointing season individually for him, and I'm sure he would acknowledge that himself. He is a great leader, so I'm really glad he was a team captain this year. I hope that's the case next year as well. The only other person I could see really taking that title from him would be Leo Fernandez, which I think, would be fair. But Aaron Guillen is truly a rock in the back. Did not have the season he would have hoped, but like you said, and like we've said for a lot of these guys, but I think truly in this case, it kind of epitomizes Aaron Guillen's season. he went down with his ship a lot, right? I mean, it's what happened.
Yeah. That's
The,
a great way to put it.
the team, again, kind of like with Doherty, like I'm not, not to use the same excuse, but like it can't really carry the team. And when you try to, I think you're going to make more individual mistakes. Everybody's a bit more uncomfortable. Aaron Guillen had a couple individual mistakes that were super uncharacteristic of him this season. But I think with another good offseason, with a good preseason, with what will likely be at least partially a new back line, even if Lasso sticks around. Hopefully some time to settle in here, and then he'll be back to the Aaron Guillen we know and love from the past several seasons. I'm not quite sure who's on the market right now in the USL level, but I'm sure there's someone we can go pick up and try to get back to that back line that lives in my heart forever with Jordan Scarlett, Forrest Lasso, and Aaron Guillen. So that was unstoppable back line. So he was part of that. So I still love Aaron Guillen. All that to say, Aaron Guillen had at best a B- season. And I think that's being a little generous. And I think that's just partially me loving Aaron Guillen way too much to go anywhere below that. So that's my biased rating for him. But he'll be back next year much stronger, I think.
I agree. And I guess we are in agreement as well about the grade there for Mr. Guillen. So, we will look forward to him being around again in 2025.
Yeah.
The last offender on our list is Zane Bubb, 24 years old, turning 25, 7 appearances, 6 of which were off the bench, 1 man of the match award. Unfortunately, he dealt with injuries. This was also his first professional season. So combination of being a rookie, dealing with injuries, it is difficult, obviously, to get on the season in general, get on the field in general over the course of the season. And he's not going to be back at this point. The Rowdies announced that they did not either pick up his option or whatever the deal was. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he would not be. He would not be available for 2025. So, Zane Bubb, it's a difficult one. I don't know. I can't be too harsh based off of the season that he had, which was, again, injuries, rookie. It's your first year as a professional. I believe his dad is actually the head of the local Jacksonville soccer academy that will be partnered with Sporting Jacks, who are joining the USL Championship and USL Super League. So I think so, because one of the heads of coaching there, last name is Bubb. So I can't imagine that Zane Bubb from Jacksonville is not related to this person. But either way, that's neither here nor there. I'm going to go with a C- for Zane Bubb. I don't think that he had a great season. I don't think that he had a bad season. And it's very difficult to give him worse than that, considering the amount of time that he had literally available to play, let alone the amount of time that he actually was on the field.
I think that's a little harsh based on, the limited time he got, just judging him on, he had that, it was 2 starts, right? 2 starts between, 1 start against Detroit, I believe. I'm looking back at his games this year. And then he played 62 minutes against Pittsburgh. Maybe that was off the bench. No, he started against what? Someone get injured in the Detroit game, maybe. Yeah, that's right. So he came in the 7th minute against Detroit in Detroit. And I remember that game in particular because, he scored in that one, which was super fun. Equalized before halftime to make the game 1-1. He had a pretty good game defensively. And I'll talk about the game just for a second because that was a huge game for us. Unfortunately, we would go on to lose. Yeah. But Zane Bubb, if I recall correctly, and I think I am for this one, I remember talking about this game on the pod. He was one of my bright spots in this one because it took him a couple minutes to settle in. He looked uncomfortable at first, totally understandable, I think. Rookie guy, first serious minutes in a professional game. He had 1 minute, 5 minutes, and 5 minutes in 3 games before that. Now he had 83 minutes off the bat. He was going to play most of the game.
Right.
And he did a pretty good job in this one, actually. And again, he got that goal, which was actually a pretty nice finish as well. But defensively, he settled in and he ended up looking pretty good in that one. FotMob liked him in the back end of this season. In his 3 last games, he had 7.7, 7.1, 6.3 average performance against Charleston. That game, we lost 3-1. But overall, I mean, it looked like this kid had a lot to give. And once he settled in and he got those first couple rough minutes out of the way against Detroit, I really liked him in that game, truly. Um, Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to get on the field, I think, as a rookie defender. I think that's a position where you can't really afford mistakes as much as you might be able to, I don't know, in the attack. You can afford to let a rookie get minutes, and
you can certainly afford to lose the ball more.
yeah, maybe you shank a finish, but in the back, if you make, the same type of mistake, you're giving up a goal, right? Um, all that being said, I did really like Zane Bubb's few appearances that he did have. I'm wishing him all the best because I really liked him as a depth piece here. I think next season he would have continued to get more comfortable with the squad. Um, I think it's hard to keep someone around as a depth piece when he feels like he might be more of a starter somewhere else. So totally fair. I can see that happening with, another squad. In the limited minutes he had, I will give him a B- because I really did like his performance against Detroit. Solid performances against Pittsburgh. And then, 20 minutes he had against Charleston was neither here nor there. And then the rest were 5-minute appearances, 3 or 4 more times. So mostly judging it off the Detroit game and the Pittsburgh game. And I liked him a lot. So great depth piece. I really wish he would have stuck around because I think he's a good person to have coming off the bench. If an Aaron Guillen goes down, then we need 20 minutes out of a guy. He's solid. So good luck to him. I really liked him, and I hope he does well wherever he goes.
I think that's actually a fair point. Yeah, obviously, good luck to him. And if he sticks around Florida, there are a couple of options. Hopefully, one that'll be a little bit better down south as well in 2025. We will see how that plays out. But in the middle of this, I do want to say liking and subscribing is free. If you think, though, that you might need some new threads coming up for, let's say, the 2025 season, you can support our podcast a little bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs that we've got there. There will be a link in the description. I'm pointing to it, in fact, and you can use the promo code COYR for 10% off. Please do check out our lineup. There's actually a lot of cool new stuff there that I hadn't seen before until I checked it out again recently. Stuff about the Tampa Bay Sun. Everybody loves the Tampa Bay Sun, folks. Everybody's going to those games. So, yeah, get some stuff, get some merch, get some RBLR merch in particular, and help us out while helping the other teams out too. All right, now moving on, let's get into the attackers here. This will be hopefully a little bit quicker because there are only a few players, but there are also going to take up a lot of time in terms of conversation. So the first one, Manuel Arteaga, 30 years old, 36 appearances, 33 starts, 18 USL goals, 2 in the Open Cup, 3 assists, and 6 Man of the Match awards. Honestly, that seems low for all of those numbers. But this is going to be an interesting one, Carlos, because in my opinion, he and his strike partner up top, you could say strike partner, I guess they didn't quite play that role, but he and his strike partner up top both had incredible numbers in terms of a striker playing over the course of a season. You hit double digits, that's already pretty good. It doesn't matter unless you're playing 40, 50 games and you hit double digits. Maybe that's not as good. In 36 appearances, you score 20 goals. That's some serious. That is some serious feedback. So it's hard to say that either Manuel Arteaga or his strike partner had bad seasons. But I still always just have this monkey on my back of August and afterwards. And it's not like Arteaga in particular even stopped scoring during that period. It just wasn't as effective. And it wasn't as frequent as it was beforehand, to be fair. It still kept going. But it just wasn't as effective. And it's so hard to say that somebody's scoring is not good enough. So, yeah, I don't know. I still got to give him a good score for the numbers alone. The numbers are incredible. But I think that if the Rowdies season had gone better, this would be a better grade. So that's how I'll caveat this, and I'll give him an A-.
Sure. Yeah, I'm really glad he's back on the team next year. He is like a kind of the pinnacle of like a veteran USL player that knows how to score goals. I think he is kind of like what Sebastian Wanzati was for us, right? kind of similar play styles. But it's Guanzati, when he was kind of at his peak with this Rowdy squad, around the same age, 30-ish years old, right? Knocking in goals left and right, knows where to be. Arteaga had a great season. Like you said, I think a majority of his goals came in that first half of the season, if I did the numbers right. And he had some memorable goals as well, as you can probably recall that Birmingham goal in particular, in the Open Cup, bicycle kick, and that insane chaos of a game. He was, I think my only thing with Arteaga truly was that he would almost like lose his head every once in a while. Maybe not every once in a while, a little too often. I mean, he got that, I don't think he got a red card, but he would get another yellow. No, it was
got a yellow card suspension, right?
Yeah. So it was actually the Open Cup game itself. Yeah, now that I'm remembering right. In the Open Cup game itself, he got a stupid red card at the end of the game, for maybe mouthing off to the ref, saying something he might maybe shouldn't have. And then we missed him for the FC Dallas game, right?
That's it.
Huge player on the squad. Can't really afford to lose the goal production he has for a game of the magnitude of FC Dallas, right? Where it was decided by one goal, if I'm remembering right. Him being in that game might have made a big difference. I think we talked about that on the pod after that game, that the Arteaga absence was pretty noticeable in that one.
All the chances that we had that nobody finished, unfortunately.
Exactly. And, not to spoil what I'll say about Cal Jennings, but Cal Jennings knocked in a lot of goals as well, numbers wise. Had a lot of chances that he would, unfortunately, especially on the back end of the season, not be able to put away. Clear looking chances. Arteaga, I think, obviously doesn't have like the speed Cal Jennings has. He's sneaky quick. He's got a good build to him. And he knows where to be. I think that's what makes him so dangerous, is that he's in the right spot. He can make a play happen. He, occasionally pinged a long ball through to Cal Jennings as well. It was a pretty interesting duo up top that I'm not sure if it ever like fully found its partnership chemistry. Independent of that, he still scored 20 goals and got 3 assists, right? So I think it's a pretty easy A- as well. Like I think just thinking about the back half of the year might have slowed down somewhat. Maybe he was scoring goals that just didn't really mean anything in the game anymore. So it's hard to, put a positive spin on a goal when we're down by 2 or 3 anyway. So I'm really glad he's back. I think he's capable of putting up the same numbers next year with or without a Cal Jennings with him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think Cal Jennings maybe creates a little bit of space for him because he's constantly running around and maybe tracks a defender with him. But I think he might even be better as a forward, kind of in a lone striker role, as kind of a target man kind of role.
Yeah.
That might be where we see him thrive even more. I think maybe we had the problem of having 2 really good strikers who scored both a lot of goals.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we're trying to make them both into something they're not. I think Arteaga, I think we'll still go out and try and get another big striker, but I think Arteaga in the target man role by himself with a good attacking mid and some good wing backs that can put the ball in space for him. He might be even better as kind of the lone man up top. That seems to be where he could thrive even more. So really excited to have him back next year. I'm curious to see what Nielsen does with him, what we do in the offseason in terms of going out to maybe getting another attacker of his caliber, of Cal Jennings' caliber, if we're going for depth and letting Arteaga do the heavy lifting. We'll have to see. But I think he can put this level of production up next year as well. A- for me. Again, I think like you said, you made a good point. Probably would be higher if the season went a little bit better, if we didn't have that rough patch in the middle. But you can't really say anything bad about 20 goals. Absolutely.
Yeah. It would be hard to leave that out for whatever reason, but
Yeah.
I think that he does have more to give. Certainly he is in like a prime age, especially for his role. So I think that we're going to get more out of Mr. Arteaga in 2025. Moving on to our next player. He is a club legend and somebody that has already been announced as coming back as well for 2025. That's fantastic. We should all be throwing our hands up in celebration over this. Leo Fernandez, possible team captain, according to Carlos. I wouldn't be upset with that. 32 years old, turning 33 over the course of the offseason, 22 appearances, of which 16 came off the bench. Please remember that as we go about this section in particular. 3 goals, 3 assists, 5 man of the match awards. I'm just going to say immediately A for me. You think, okay, he's had 22 appearances, 3 goals, 3 assists. Is that worth an A? First of all, this is his second season coming back from a very long-term injury, and that's unfortunate because it's his absence on the field is so noticeable when he gets a run of games. When you get Leo Fernandez for 2 or 3 games in a row, you're like, that's what we were missing. That is what we did not have all of this time.
Yeah.
And I really think the way that we ended up setting up this season, we had Danny Crisostomo as this link player on the right. We had Josh Perez as the link player on the left. I think that role was originally intended to go to Leo Fernandez, if that was supposed to be the role originally. Maybe it wasn't, but regardless, Leo Fernandez, when he came into that role, he finally got a couple of starts in a row, especially around the IMG games. And man, did he just look so good. All of the substitute appearances before then, he wasn't even supposed to be starting in the early part of the season because he was still getting his fitness back, and then he lost it because of the long-term injury. So yeah, Leo Fernandez, having him back, if we get him fully fit throughout 2025, it doesn't matter. This is going to be a different team. It does not matter. Leo Fernandez is the heartbeat of this team alongside players like Lewis Hilton. The two of them, I think, in midfield, possibly you add in Danny Crisostomo, depends on what lineup we're going with next year. We could be a lot more potent just by having them both healthy for the whole year. That's my spiel.
Yeah. What's the rating though? Do you give him a rating?
A.
Okay. Yeah, like you said, I mean, he got some minutes early on in the year as well. But again, they were kind of like sporadic, and maybe he shouldn't have even gotten them yet as he was kind of settling in. Got an assist against Charleston back in July in that 4-2 thriller of a win. Other than that, bench minutes, stepped out, wasn't on the bench at all for some time as he maybe got back to full fitness. In that Colorado Springs switchbacks game, we went away to Colorado Springs and we were down ugly. He came in and brought a pretty nice spark to the team that ultimately didn't mean anything because it was kind of late in the game. But in his 22 minutes, he got a goal and assist as well. And I think that's when it kind of started. We all started to notice that he's coming back to fitness. And like you said, we started to notice how much we might have missed him.
Yeah.
Got that goal against Pittsburgh in a crucial 2-1 win as well. Several assists between then and the end of the season as well. So I think he was pretty quiet, like when he came off the bench early on, but like he was coming back from injury. The numbers he did produce as he settled in were nice. If you can extrapolate that into a full season, like he's done in the past with this Rowdies team, I think we have a pretty exciting situation with him potentially, hopefully being back to the full fitness. Leo Fernandez, we know and love. If he's able to be that and have a full offseason of being healthy with Manu Arteaga up top, I think that's a really, really good situation to be in, with Leo Fernandez sitting between the midfield and maybe just behind Arteaga, right? Being able to connect the midfield and Arteaga, and in some cases get up and score the goals himself. I think that's a really, really good situation offensively for this. So really excited for next season to have him and Arteaga back. I think that'll be a really fun situation in the attacking mid and in the striker role. This season, I think he gets a B plus. I think it's maybe a little harsh. I love Leo Fernandez. Leo knows I love him. I message every once in a while checking in. I was making sure he was doing my due diligence, right, to check in and see how he's doing during those injuries and everything. I know. I hope he knows how much I love him. He's a fantastic player for the squad. Again, a little slow off the beginning, but it's hard to take off too much from that because he was still coming back from the injuries, kind of got re-injured at some point in the season as well. So on field, collectively, picked it up very quickly as he settled in. So B plus might be a little harsh still even, but I think it's pretty fair. Just looking at the on-field performances, he will be so good next year, and I'm really excited if he gets that full off season to get healthy. So this could be really good next year, James. Just the Leo Fernandez Arteaga 1-2 and the attacking mid and striker. Like I'm pretty excited for that. So keep an eye on that. Let's hope there's no oh my goodness, what's the name of the academy that injured him way back when?
Monteverde Academy.
Monteverde. Let's hope there's no Monteverde type preseason game ever again. Let's never invite them ever again. What the hell were they thinking? And we'll go from there and have a great season next year with him.
Yeah, let's. We don't need Orlando teams around here anyway.
Absolutely not.
Just be gone.
Absolutely.
This next player, easy A+. There's no question for me. Christian Ortiz, 17 years old, 9 appearances, all off the bench. First professional season as a senior level soccer player, made his debut for the Dominican national under-20 team in the CONCACAF under-20 championship. From there, went on, made his senior debut for the Dominican national team. A+, no question. All I want, I've told him to his face a couple of times now, when he gets that first goal, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to scream, running around the stadium. If it's in our stadium, maybe it'll be somewhere else, and I'll just scream running around my house, and people in Bradenton will have to deal with that. Christian Ortiz is going to be a great player, and I'm so excited for his future. A+.
Yeah. Maybe I'll be a little harsher and give an A-, but like it's hard to go any lower than that. And I'll spoil my rating for the next guy as well, because I think they're in similar situations just because of their age. I think they'll both get an A because they both looked really good, and specifically Christian Ortiz looked really good in his appearances off the bench. I was really hoping we would get kind of like a nice and easy Open Cup matchup pretty early on for him to get some minutes and get that first goal to kind of let the floodgates open. The only reason maybe like give him like an A- was because of I'm trying to remember the game, and I'm sure he's still punching himself to this day for it. Dude, one beautiful look one-on-one against
I was up from my seat, and I was already running to get to the aisle to run down and just start screaming from a lower level. I remember exactly the player talking about.
Yeah, I can't remember what the opponent, but that was the game that I think the whole stadium like collectively held their breath. And he put it just wide. So super unfortunate. I'm really, judging him based off of that play because like he obviously doesn't get a ton of minutes off the bench, but I truly think like if he continues to settle in nicely, continues to stick around with the squad, I'm not sure like what point it'll come when he's like knocking away goals, right? But it could be next year, maybe as like a serious depth piece, right? I'm happy that he got re-signed because I think there's just there's something for us to get out of him being here, even if he doesn't play a ton. But I think he will play more and more next year.
Yeah,
I'm not sure like what kind of striker we'll go out and get, if any, this offseason. But there's more of a role for him next year now that he's had a full professional season under his belt. I'm really excited to see what that role is. I'm hoping he gets that first goal this year, because I do think it's one of those situations of it's kind of just like it'll be a floodgate,
Yeah.
It's kind of how it goes for these strikers, especially someone of his age. Knock in that first goal, and I think we'll be talking about honestly a pretty good depth piece right now, at his age, going forward. A guy that we can see doing big things somewhere else. Maybe get some money for it too. So keep him as long as we can. Let him grow in this squad. Let him continue to develop with this team, and continue to be grow into a serious role player. And from there, we'll see what the future has in store for him, because I think it's pretty big things.
Same.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree on that. The next player, just like you said, Carlos, very similar situation. Endry Mustali, originally born in Italy, moved to America, and has come through the system with the Tampa Bay Rowdies Academy. 17 years old, 5 appearances as well, all off the bench, including one Man of the Match award. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I will caveat that and say I think his Man of the Match award came during our bad stretch of the season. When he came off the bench, he just provided some spark because there was effectively no spark.
I think it was his
beforehand.
first game. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was his first game.
So that's the bit of a caveat that I'll give that specific thing. But all things considered, first professional season, he and Christian Ortiz both are gigantic for their age. They are men. I have never in my life been anywhere near the musculature that they already have. So yeah, they've got big things in store for them. And Endry Mustali for me also gets an A. I'm very excited for both Ortiz and Mustali. If we can get some season down the line where they are 1-2 for strikers before they inevitably get sold on to bigger and better things, then I'll be so happy for that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, I think that might be Robbie Nielsen's long-term play if they continue to settle in nicely. That one game, by the way, where we gave him the Man of the Match award was that Loudoun United game that we lost 2-0 at home. It was a super ugly game.
That's why there was no spark.
Yeah, it was a super ugly game. Blake Bodley got one of the dumbest red cards I've ever seen. Truly a silly mistake from him to put it kind of out of reach for us. Loudoun goes up 2-0. Endry comes in 7 minutes later. We have 10 men on the field. And we're down 2-0. And the kid just put in a good shift, like with 10 guys. He chased down the balls. He won possession a couple times as the forward. 17 years old, good build to him. I mean, again, similar situation to Christian Ortiz for the sake of keeping them consistent, because it was pretty much identical seasons in terms of what they could produce for the Rowdies. A-, again, young kids. So they get a lot of leeway, obviously. But like, I mean, man, like this is pretty cool to have these depth pieces right now. Maybe serious role players next season, guys that knock in goals when they come in, right? Because that's what they are. They're forwards, right? So we're gonna need them to settle in. Maybe a full off season for Endry Mustali is going to do him really well in a professional setting. Not maybe, it surely will. And I think that will be good for both of these kids to find their footing in the professional world. And yeah, it will be interesting because I'm curious what that competition is like between them too, because there's not really a world right now where both of them get like significant minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
I think some point next season, we'll see one of them stick out as our main go-to guy between the two of them that'll step in, get more serious minutes. Not that the other guy won't be able to contribute to the team, but we'll just have to, I think, maybe put in a bit more work to get those minutes on the field. And when he does get those minutes on the field, make the most of them. So I think there'll be some good competition between these kids. And I think it will be good for the both of them, truly. To make them better players. So this will be really fun. Keep an eye on both of them. Endry Mustali looks insane from the highlights and the clips I've seen from him online. Good future for him as well. Hopefully a serious role player next year. That'd be fun.
Absolutely. All right, now we return to one of our regular starters, Cal Jennings, 27 years old, 37 appearances, 35 starts, 16 USL goals, 3 U.S. Open Cup goals, 3 assists, 7 Man of the Match awards. Again, considering those numbers, that seems low. This is another situation, just like Manuel Arteaga. I just feel it's hard to be harsh considering those numbers. Imagine putting up 16 goals in the league, another 3, so 19 overall. And you're like, well, but actually, Cal Jennings, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's very difficult to be that way, but again, it's the situation where August and afterward, The whole team dipped. Cal Jennings in particular, his numbers went down more. A lot more of his goals came before August, and then he picked them up again in that last week. I think the IMG week going into playoffs. So that was tough, but it was tough for everybody. Were we going to put those back on just the shoulders of Cal Jennings and Manuel Arteaga? Obviously not. So it's very hard to be harsh, but I got to give him a B+ for the 2024 season.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I'm going to agree with you actually entirely because, again, I think for all the goals he scored, unfortunately, there were just big moments where we really needed his finishing to be a bit better. And we talked about that in the back half of the season. He's got so much to give. He's still only 27 and plays like a veteran in some sense. I think if he can kind of find some consistency in his finishing up top, with all the chances he creates naturally by being the type of player he is, getting into space and really taking on 2-3 defenders one-on-one. When he gets into that final position to slot the ball away, if he can find a bit more consistency, he's going to find success. I mean, not that he didn't find success here.
Right.
He's going to find even more success wherever he goes. Yeah. So B+, I think is totally fair. Would have loved to see him stick around, have another season with Arteaga to build that chemistry. I think they would have continued to grow into one of the more dangerous attacking duos in the league. It's unfortunate because the year before we had Cal Jennings and JJ Williams, an incredible attacking duo that I think grew in chemistry as the season went on. If they had another season together, I think they would have even continued to grow together and become by far the most attacking duo in this league, most dangerous attacking duo in this league. JJ Williams has had a great season with Rhode Island. And now this year we had Cal Jennings stick around and Arteaga come in to be the new guy. Again, similar situation. Started off pretty good, actually. Started off quicker than Cal and JJ the season prior. Fell off a little bit together. But again, I think if they had a full offseason together, they would have continued to grow into an even more dangerous attacking duo. So I think it's unfortunate in some sense. We see kind of a repetition of what happened last season. But it is what it is. It's a business, and Cal's going to find success wherever he goes. So hopefully we can find someone to, again, either complement Manuel Arteaga or support him as, more of a depth role as he takes up that solo striker role that maybe he's more comfortable with.
Yeah. While you were talking about JJ Williams, I just looked him up again. He is actually also 27, turning 28. So, he had a very good year, obviously, for Rhode Island. But either way, Cal Jennings, we'll see where he winds up. I hope it's not. I hope it's not the Scottish Second Division. But he's a good player, and I'm certain he's going to put up numbers wherever he goes.
Absolutely.
All right. Our last attacker then here, Josh Perez, 26 years old, turning 27 over the offseason, 35 appearances over the course of this season, 1 USL goal, 1 cup goal, 5 assists for Mr. Perez, and 4 Man of the Match awards. This one is an interesting one because when the season started, I did not expect Josh Perez to actually even be one of our starters. I expected him to be a depth piece. As it turned out, he became a starter or was forced into that role by injuries to other players. And I felt in the early months of the season, really took that opportunity and ran with it. And then obviously it got to the summer months and that started to dip and it got to August and that started it started to dip. So I was very high on Josh Perez the first couple of months of this season. I thought I had not expected this from him. He and Danny Crisostomo blew me away in March, April, May. And then it's unfortunately, it just tapered off. So I would love to give them more here, but I feel like the best that I could give Josh Perez is a B in this one, because I think that he had probably one of the better seasons that I've seen from Josh Perez over the course of following his USL career, at least. And unfortunately, it just didn't continue over the course of the season. So I will stick with my B, and he will not be returning for 2025. So I obviously wish him the best, but I do know that he has levels that he can hit. It's just unfortunate that they weren't maintained.
Yeah, I'll just agree entirely with you. I think you summed it up really well. I'll give him a B. He's got Rowdies in his blood. I always think it's worthy to mention that his uncle was on that original Rowdies squad in the 70s.
That's always good to mention.
So I was glad he could find some success with us this season. Again, fell off at some point later off in the year. There wasn't as much production as there was. Even into the middle part of the year, he continued putting up some assists.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had a good thing going. And you know what? This is kind of a random poll, but I think maybe that Charlie Dennis kind of move in the middle maybe affected the midfield. Like, I don't know. Charlie Dennis had some good minutes this year early on, and Josh Perez had, I think, in some sense, a good thing going with him early on. And I don't know. It's always hard to shake up such a crucial part of the field, like the central midfield. Josh Perez being in that kind of attacking mid role, just couldn't really find the rhythm he had early on. So it is what it is. Good luck to him wherever he goes. Again, had a great season, all things considered. But I'll agree. I don't think it's about a B.
Yeah. While you were talking, I had the JJ Williams page pulled up here, and very, very quick side note that I wanted to highlight. While in high school, Williams also played basketball and was on the bass fishing team at Alabama Christian. Huh. Kind of weird, but yeah.
So maybe that's what we need to be looking for, James. Here's a guy who did a bit
who's
of
got the
fishing
fishing
in high
skills.
School. Yeah, I mean, look, apparently it's a good indicator for success in the Rowdies. J.D. Williams had an insane year, and I'm sure that's what the entire Rowdies front office was looking into when they signed him, was his bass fishing resume. So keep an eye out for some good bass fishers this offseason, James. Hopefully we can get John to throw that into the player ratings and variables this offseason is the bass fishing skills. I like that a lot.
We've got to incorporate that into our offseason wish list somehow.
Yeah.
The NCAA fishing and soccer crossover.
Yeah.
I wonder if that has ever existed even once.
Yeah. I like that. It's a good shout. Okay, James, those were all of our defenders and our attackers. Lots to talk about there. And I think very worthy of a lot of talk because a lot of different types of players here that we will either pretty much not be talking about ever again as they go off to their different clubs. And, thank you to their for their service on the Rowdies, and some guys who we know will be coming back to this team, or some guys that are up in the air still. So I think it was good to give some shouts to those who had a good season before they go off and find success wherever they go. And more importantly, give some shout outs to those guys that we want to come back, like Forrest Lasso, because he had a great run early on and he's still up in the air in terms of his contract. So hopefully we get him back. I think this is really good. For kind of somewhat of an offseason wish list at the same time as a player rating episode. So James, before we wrap up here, a bit of Rowdies news that you probably saw last week if you are on the Rowdies Twitterverse, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you get your Rowdies social media. Rowdies announced a pretty big signing, Ollie Bassett, the former CPL, the Canadian Premier League MVP in 2022. He came to us from Atletico Ottawa, which is such a fun team to say. Just doesn't really match Atletico Ottawa, but whatever. The fans over there seem to really like him. I've seen lots of Ottawa fans tweet out social media, post tons of love for him. I'm not totally sure what the level of soccer is in terms of the CPL and how comparable it is. I'm sure it's pretty comparable, but he puts up great numbers over there, and I'm really excited to have him over here. I think he'll be a fun, lively, attacking mid kind of player that maybe Charlie Dennis was for us like last year. I think that's the kind of vibe I think we can expect from this kind of player. Pretty electric from the highlights I've seen. It certainly seems to be a lively energy player based on the fans' reactions from Ottawa, and again, the limited highlights and tape I've seen on him.
Yeah, Ollie Bassett has racked up the awards in Canadian Premier League soccer, so that is something to note. The Canadian Premier League is probably not the same level as USL Championship, but it's not that far off. I would say that the two best teams in any given year could certainly compete for USL Championship playoff spots. Maybe not the trophy, but fair enough. Forge, in particular, in the Canadian Premier League would probably do well there. But yeah, Ollie Bassett, if you can do the numbers that he did in the Canadian Premier League, it's very likely that those can translate over to the USL Championship. He's obviously no stranger to the travel. He's no stranger to the elements. He's no stranger to the turf. All of these items that Rowdies players will have to put up with, they will have to fly to, what's the farthest that they have to fly for us? Like Colorado Springs? No, obviously California.
Yeah.
California. And I guess depending on U.S. Open Cup games, maybe even farther. And then there is the turf, like I said, and the conditions depending on when we end up playing teams. Like maybe if it went this way, maybe we ended up playing Detroit in November, something like that. So,
He's ready for it.
he will, I think, do well for us, and I'm excited to see exactly how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm excited for him. He looks like a really, really electric player, which I think you always need a bit of in the midfield. I think he and Leo Fernandez in the middle could be pretty fun to watch. Keep an eye on that. It'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. The next player that we wanted to highlight is a little bit of the outgoing news. We had obviously previously talked about Jordan Doherty, one of our defenders in 2024. Well, we had mentioned that he was leaving last week, and we now know where he's going. He is following Neil Collins to Wraith Rovers in the Scottish Second Division. Now, I will say that I believe he followed Neil Collins because he has a very good working relationship with Neil Collins. Probably it is easy for him to move back to Britain. He obviously he's from Ireland, but he started his playing career with Norwich City, one of our partner clubs. That's how he originally came to the Tampa Bay Rowdies. So all of those factors probably led him to saying, I would like to go back to Britain. Neil Collins is that immediate in. He's going to start playing as soon as the new season opens, or excuse me, the new window opens. So that will be in January. That's how it works over in, well, I guess most of the world. Either way, the new window starts in January. That's when he will start playing again immediately. He probably is already over there and training with the team, if I had to guess.
Yeah, there were already pictures of him training today.
There we go. Yeah. So I get why he would make that move, and I assume that it will lead to bigger and better things. But I just want to put this out there right now already. And this is not meant to cause offense to him, Neil Collins, anybody else in this league. But I believe Jordan Doherty is better than the Scottish Second Division already. Carlos, you and I were talking about this beforehand. Dan Casey, previously of Sacramento Republic, plays for Motherwell. They are in the Scottish top flight. And if Dan Casey can play there, not that Dan Casey and Jordan Doherty are the exact same players, but I am pretty convinced that Jordan Doherty is at least better than Wraith Rovers. And wherever he ends up come the summer, I don't know if it will still be in Kirkcaldy, which is the place where Wraith Rovers are based. So again, no offense to anybody involved, but I believe that Jordan Doherty is better than this team, and I think that he will have a great spell here because I think that he is that much. I think that he's just got the skill for that, and he can blow them away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he'll make his mark very quickly, I think. Yeah. Get him on Motherwell too. A little US out of Motherwell pipeline. I love Motherwell. That'd be fun for him. And yeah, I think it's a fair point. All things considered. Because of it, though, I'm sure he'll get some pretty good attention in that part of the world pretty quickly. Hopefully, he'll have a good season right off the bat and make his way over to even bigger things. So keep an eye on him. He's still so young. He's got a great future out of him still.
Yeah.
So good things coming for Jordan Doherty, and hopefully in the process, Neil Collins as well. Hopefully, it leads to a good season for both of them. And,
I would love that. I would love that. Absolutely. Actually, if they are not in one of the promotion positions, but let's say that they got there in the future, that would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool for both of them. So
yeah, exactly. Then you know what? He'll be in the Scottish First Division, and he'll be better than the Scottish Second Division club, like you were talking about. So long term, hey, maybe not even long term, short to medium term, maybe we can see a promotion story with Neil Collins and Jordan Doherty. That would be So fun to watch, by the way, to see them both make their way in that league. So congrats to him. I still think it'll be a good move for him. And I think he'll, like you said, blow them away over there. So good luck to both of them. Absolutely.
And the last bit of news, the U.S. women's national team played 2 games last week. And then today they drew England 0-0 in the first game at Wembley. It was still pretty interesting. The U.S. were missing a couple of players, but 0-0 is fair enough. Whatever. Today, though, in Alyssa Nayer's final international game, the U.S. beat Holland 2-1. So that was pretty good. Good send-off for Alyssa Nayer. A legend with the national team, has won, obviously, a ton of awards, ton of trophies. So, yeah. It was very cool, and I wish her all the best in her future. It's still continuing at club level, but whatever that entails probably in her post-playing days as well.
Totally. James, this has been a long one, but I think we got to everything we needed to this week. We're on pace for our off-season recaps and our player reviews. We got one more part to do. Probably next week, but who knows? Maybe we have a wave of new Rowdies news and information I'll talk about next week that'll throw off the plans again. Keep an eye on all the content this offseason. Still big things happening. Fun plans in store for us and the offseason content. Thank you for listening. Follow us on RBLR Sports, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, anywhere, James. We're everywhere. We're in your walls. We're on your phone. We are in the metaverse. We're everywhere at RBLR Sports and all the social medias. Follow me at CarlosTPA10 on Twitter. All the stuff happening over there right now. Georgetown basketball is in full swing right now, so that's been one of my obsessions on the Twitterverse. The Tampa Bay Sun still in full swing as well. They're coming up on the midpoint of the season soon. In about 2 weeks, I think, is their last game of this first half of the season. James, where can everyone follow you?
At RBLR James K. Should be relatively easy, as I am with the RBLR podcast. So wanted to make it that easy. But everybody, you can get at both of us using the hashtag AskRBLR or during our live broadcast. Please join us there too. Thank you for joining, though. If you can, please like and subscribe to our podcast. You can get the full experience on YouTube, just like I said. And we are also on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts. Wherever you are, we are too. Just like Carlos said, your phone, your walls, your TV, wherever you are, the outlets, we're there. We will see you again next week. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.